Hello, and you are very welcome back to the Public Eye Business Podcast, brought to you by Granite Exchange. I'm your host, Sarah Travers, and throughout the series I speak with local entrepreneurs and business owners to learn more about how their companies have come to be, to gain insight into their growth and find out how they continue to innovate. So wherever you get your podcasts from, remember to keep an eye out for all new episodes and subscribe to stay up to date. Well, in the podcast studio today, I'm joined by Oscar Woolley, owner and marketing director of Suki Tea. You will know those distinctive little teapots in cafes across Northern Ireland. Oscar, you are very welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Now, before we begin, as always, Oscar, you don't need to speak just yet. I'm going to give a little bit of background, but oh my goodness, what a background when it comes to Suki Tea and indeed to Oscar. So, based in Belfast, Suki Tea Makers ethically source and blend loose leaf teas, herbal infusions and fruit blends from all over the world. In 2005, Oscar and his business partner Annie set up a stand at a small farmers market in Belfast. They then went touring about the island of Ireland, visiting farmers markets and craft fairs, and with the very generous help of their friends, hit the music festival scene with their tea and toast setup. Now, having a strong brand identity and keeping true to their goals was the focus at this early stage. The business plan was tea, fun and money. Oscar, it's great to have a business plan and that sounds like a good one to me. But can we start with a little bit about who you are, first of all?
Of course. My career has been varied. Before I started the business, I worked 32 jobs. I counted them all. Mainly creative and a foodie at heart. So worked in the food industry a lot. I studied graphic design and illustration. I'm a dad. I love drawing and painting too.
Right, so you've got the creative in you. 32 jobs. So by the time you got to setting up your own business, had you set up any other businesses before that?
I had, yeah, a few design kind of ideas and teaching art as well, and just small kind of testing what it would be like to run a business, but in a very safe environment. So nothing really big. This was the first big scale idea that we had, really.
And where are you from originally?
So I'm from the Midlands in England, from Nottingham.
Lovely. I went to university there, to Nottingham Trent University. And what brought you then over to Northern Ireland?
Well, I was backpacking around Asia, and I bumped into Samantha, who is now my wife, and we just stuck to each other. So she brought me back to Belfast kind of as a souvenir. Her best friend is Annie, who then I met and started the business with.
That was my next question. So where did Annie come in? How did you meet her? Hi, Samantha, this is Annie. But it was the other way around. So
yes.
And what was it about you and Annie then that you thought we could do this together?
Well, we like to challenge each other. I suppose we're both quite similar in the fact that we're a little bit rebellious, and we'd had a few talks about how to take charge of our lives and what we would do as a business. So there's two dates that recognise the start of Suki Tea. One's in March. That's when we officially signed the business. Made it an actual business.
Official.
Official, yeah. Mm-hmm. But the first is a discussion we had on September the 4th, 2004. So we've just celebrated 18 years in business.
Goodness.
Because that first chat was just about what if we did start a business together? So we were walking through Ormer Park and had a discussion around taking control of our life. We were both in dead-end jobs, and at that particular time, and something we needed a challenge, needed something fresh. So the conversation went from, well, I'm sure we could do it, because we'd both done a course with Invest NI, which was the Go For It program at the time it was called. And that kind of gave us a bit of confidence to even just have that chat at the time to say, well, we know that we can write a business plan and maybe get some funding and kind of go down that route. But the conversation led to all manner of different ideas. And then about an hour later, we arrived in town and shook hands and said, let's start a tea business.
So tea became the focus. So when you said, what do people want? They want tea.
It could have been wine or whiskey or organic pizzas or a gallery or a cafe, something. But there was something that resonated with tea on that particular day, and we just went, okay.
And you walked from, was it the Ravenhill
Road
through Ormo Park?
Yeah.
So how long would that have taken?
40 minutes or something like that.
Minutes.
So 40 minutes.
And you come up with tea.
Yeah.
Suki tea at that point?
No. It was just, let's take on the tea world. Let's kind of shake things up in how tea is being presented, and we didn't go too much into it. It wasn't a very long walk, but it was shake hands, let's do something with tea.
Okay, so you shook hands and you started.
Mm-hmm.
What was the tea world like? You knew what about it?
Well, I like tea.
We love tea. Yeah. I love tea. I can't start the day without tea.
So Annie was from a research background. I was from a foodie and creative background. So both very complementary when it came to kind of getting our teeth stuck into what this might look like. And the original idea, the actual name of the business is Suki Tea House Limited legally. And so the original idea was to take on the coffee shops and set up just a tea house. And that's that slight rebellious nature. Just have a huge menu of different teas and then just coffee at the bottom. Very much like it is if you go to a cafe shop at the moment. It's coffee, and then sometimes at the bottom it's just tea. No explanation.
Exactly, just tea.
Second thought, that kind of thing.
And you knew there was much more to tea when you'd done your research anyway than just your regular, whatever your regular choice is.
Yeah, and I was 28 at the time, so I'd travelled, I'd been around Asia, I knew what good tea looked like and the experience of it. I'd been treated to almost kind of ceremonial style tea events, so we decided to bring a bit of that in.
And what was the most incredible tea experience for you during your travels?
Probably it was in Vietnam. At that point, I was 23 and I'd been to my first tea garden and picked some tea and seen it. I saw it all the way through to being processed. That was a real insight into how it works.
Okay.
Lovely.
And the flavours and everything, you just loved it?
Yeah.
The whole experience?
Yeah, and tea through university, it's a bit of a comfort. Tea means a lot of things to a lot of different people.
Well, that's what I wanted to discuss with you. And I mean, you're talking to me here in Newry, in Northern Ireland, and, it's what we turn to, isn't it, for comfort? Exactly that. If somebody's upset, let's make a cup of tea. If you wake up in the morning, you need to get yourself going, let's have a cup of tea. Before you go to bed at night, a cup of tea just to help you on your way. There's just something about it or if you don't know what else to do, put the kettle on.
Yeah, and let's just have a cup of tea and think about it. Yeah. So, yeah, and it can be mood dependent, or it can be functional, or comfort, and it can be solitary, or it can be very social. I just love, and it's different everywhere, and everybody's got if I ask you what tea means to you.
Tea means, I think you said it, I think it is that comfort thing. I just love having a cup of tea on the go. Quite often I don't get to the bottom of it. I find when I'm working at my desk, if I've got to think, I have to have a cup of something. I will have a coffee about, mid-morning, but I love tea. It just seems to help with the creative processes. Alcohol does sometimes, but no, because you get to a point where, yes, it's not helping anymore, but I definitely love the comfort of a cup of tea on the go.
And so that aspect of it fascinated us. And then the operations aspect fascinated us as well. While we were researching, we realised that coffee shops needed help. And it was really good coffee, and you go to a restaurant, you've got really good wine. But we saw an opportunity for better tea out and about. Okay,
so what happened next? Did you set up the tea house?
No, we didn't, because we went to Invest in I to get some assistance. We didn't really know how to write a business plan because we weren't from a business background. We had to learn very fast about a lot of things. So they were great. They assisted us. So we were on this journey. We'd spent maybe around a year writing a really solid business plan for tea houses. And then we were approached, and we didn't have any money to invest either. So we needed some. It cost us £600 to start the business. I borrowed my £300 off Annie, which I paid her back later. Because we needed some tea, we realised that we needed to earn a lot more money. So within this year, we were also at St George's Market and one of the Christmas markets in Belfast, the Continental Markets. And we also had a friend set up a quite crude but very functional and very needed website at the time. It was basic. It did the job, and just so we started getting this trickle of income.
And where were you getting the tea from?
So we went to a broker in London to start with. Not knowing the supply chain at the time. We bought some tea. It was packed in a spare room. We borrowed some scales from a local shop, and no phones, no transport as such. Just packing tea, labelling it, and taking it to the market.
And different types of tea?
Yeah, we started with 16 different types. And we just thought there's some black tea and some green tea. We'd done our research enough to know that there was a wide range of tea that you might need to suit different tastes. But it was experimental. Mm-hmm. The white chocolate and passion fruit didn't last too long, although it sounds very nice now. I'd probably go for that. But that was just something that kind of flashed in and disappeared quite quickly because it wasn't that favourable. So there's a lot of experimentation of what and trends change, and so blends do as well.
But white chocolate and passion fruit could come back.
They could do.
Could come back now that you've established yourself. I mentioned at the start too, when I think of Suki Tea, I think of your very distinctive little teapots and all that goes with that. So that was very much the going into the coffee shop or to the cafe, and there was a sell to be done there, because if you sold Suki Tea, you also got the Suki teapots, or did they have to buy those too?
Yes, the coffee shop would have bought those, right. Just as part of the give. Much less expensive than a £2,000 coffee machine, though.
Talk to me. How much would that have been? Would that have been more expensive than them literally just making the tea themselves, tea bag in a cup kind of thing? So did you have to convince them, is what I'm saying?
No.
Right.
No, it was easy enough. So we just presented it. The idea was to draw a parallel on the experience of somebody having a really good coffee. You go in, there's a barista, steam, theatre, and the ritual to get a good coffee is to be served by an expert. But the ritual for tea is very much on ownership. The best cup of tea you make yourself. That's
so true.
So we flipped it slightly and said, right, we're going to give absolute ownership to the tea drinker, but we're also going to give them all the theatre that they would have got with a coffee. So there's the tray and the board and the teapot, and it's loose leaf tea inside. And then they're maybe told that it's going to take 3 or 4 minutes. They can create it themselves, pour it when they like. They're in control, and they've had a lovely experience.
And they could add their milk or not add their milk, add lots of milk. We'll get into that conversation at some point. I like a strong builder's cup of tea. Do you add milk?
Yes, I do.
Depending on the type of tea, I suppose?
I do. I'm not. There's no snobbery around this.
No.
I think that's important to say. It's just you expect better if you go out and you're being charged for it. So there's a time and a place for all different types of tea, and I think the idea to have basically just to draw a parallel on the quality of the coffee that's available now in the coffee shops. That was our mission.
This podcast is sponsored by Granite Legal Services, a niche business and immigration law practice located in the heart of Newry City. Granite Legal Services provides legal advice to both individuals and companies alike across a wide range of industries, from employment, commercial or corporate law matters to immigration law. Granite Legal Services focuses on providing legally sound, practical advice to its clients. To get in touch, visit www.granitelegalservices.co.uk or contact 028 3026 2200. I read last night when I was doing a little bit of research before you coming in today that you're actually supplying outlets, around 2,500 outlets across 22 countries. Is that correct?
It is, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So how did you go from that stall in St George's Market, 16 offerings, a trickle of customers, to that?
We've always had an open attitude to asking for help, and quite brazen attitude to asking for business as well. So we're just not shy to say, can we do this? And we realised at the time. Just going back slightly. So one of the previous questions was, did you open the tea houses?
Oh, yes.
But it was Coffee Yard in Hollywood came to St. George's Market. They just started. Lovely coffee shop if you've never been. And they asked us if we could supply them with loose leaf tea and teapots, and that kind of journey started. Well, it was that conversation that made us shelf the business plan that we had, because we realised that was our journey then into coffee shops. So and they were a really, really big success. So everybody was looking at Coffee Yard to see what they were doing differently, because there was queues out the door and they just got it right. And so everybody who was looking at them started to call us saying, can we have some tea as well?
So it was getting into the right place with the right feel, the right look, the right brand. One
conversation with Jim from Coffee Yard changed the whole business plan, and we pretty much shelved it. We've never looked at it again. So we then, early on, we had nothing to lose, very flexible in how we could kind of operate and change. And we just went, okay, that's the market for us. Let's approach coffee shops. So we went to Dublin on a train, and we had a Sharpie marker, which we just put on the back of the board. We've managed to get space for £180, like a trade stand. It was between two stands in front of a pillar. It wasn't even a space really. And we took a bag of product down, put it on a table, a Sharpie marker on the back, and it just had a question to the industry, and it said, would you serve instant coffee? And of course, no coffee in the right mind is going to do that. So why is it a cheap tea bag? Why are you offering this? This is 18 years ago. We still have a journey.
Where did you do this? You went to Dublin, but where did you go specifically?
It was at RDS, in a trade show in RDS.
Fabulous.
And that was we didn't have much money, so we just had to basically say, look, we're coming down, we need a space. Give us something, please. We've got a mission here. We're on a mission. And at that show, we met a company from Glasgow who sell coffee called Matthew Algie, and they signed us up and they also had 2,000 coffee shops that they were already selling to. So they signed us up. So that was the first distributor. And now we have 20 other distributors around the world and one antique shop in Japan that does really well. It's a really kind of random relationship. But
I love that. And how did that one come about?
The guy was studying, the son of the company was studying Glasgow. His favourite coffee shop sold Suki, and he just phoned me. No, he contacted via Facebook, and that was 2008. And we've been selling Belfast Brew in Tokyo since then.
That's incredible. So the Glasgow distributor was fantastic for you as well.
Yeah.
And again, you hadn't really got any strategy. It was just going, or did you know I need to talk to that person?
We didn't know that we didn't know what a distributor was at that point. We were looking for more independent coffee shops like Coffee Yard. On the back of that one conversation, we ended up with 30 coffee shops. So,
and what happens then in terms of, you've got the demand now, but the supply, I mean, cranking everything up at that stage, how difficult was that?
So, okay, so we're going from a farmer's market business, which is based in my back bedroom. So I converted my garage, and that was the packing facility. And then shortly after, we outgrew that, so we got a small warehouse on the Bearsbridge Road in Belfast, and it was just very small amounts. Everything we earned went back into the business. It always has done. So it's always every penny has gone back in. There's no kind of profits taken.
Still.
Goodness. Yeah. So it's all reinvested.
Wow.
For the growth of the business and the people in it.
Is it still tea fun money?
Yeah. I mean, the business plan is 5 years now. It's not just on the back of a napkin. But all of those those values and those principles are embedded in the business, and there always will be. It's a lot more kind of filled out as in terms of a plan, and we have a manifesto which all the staff run by. Actually, they wrote it, but it was a really nice exercise in 2018 to get the staff to rewrite the business plan, and their values were exactly the same as ours were to start with. And it was really refreshing to know that our team they got it. Everybody gets it.
So the values haven't changed. And if you think about it, 18 years, you said you're in business now, but 18 years ago, you were really ahead of the curve because others have come since you. And was that difficult to see, or was that something that you were expecting to happen?
The expansion of loose leaf tea companies is it's really welcome. Like I'm also on the board of something called the European Specialty Tea Association, and that champions specialty tea.
Brilliant.
So a different hat. I mean, if you look at hospitality, or if you look at tea drinking habits within the UK and Ireland, it's around 95% is tea bag tea, so commodity standard tea, and then so there's a small specialty area. So there's a long way to go before it becomes really competitive. It's okay. We welcome it and embrace that.
And you talked about staff as well. So how many people do you employ now?
So we have 10 people. Our warehouse is on the Peace Line between the Falls and the Shankill Road.
I actually saw it recently. Yes. I was up visiting another company up there, and I thought, there's Suki Tea.
And we're investing in a new premises, which will, fingers crossed, we'll be moving to in 2023 into Lisbon. We're currently over, because we've grown organically, we're just over 3 warehouses, but there's 10 of us over 3 warehouses. So it doesn't really make sense. We're consolidating.
And what's your kind of role now? Are you still in there packing, or how do you fill your day? So
I've moved away from the factory, and I would look after the kind of front end of the business. So talking to customers, gaining new business, but very involved in all aspects of the business still to oversee. But Annie would head up production and logistics and purchasing the tea, and I would look after the creative side of marketing and selling the tea. That's the balance, really.
Yeah, and it's still working and it's still going well. I mean,
it's always
Annie's really like your work wife now as well. Do you see her more than you would see Samantha?
Sometimes. But we've got a great relationship, always have. We were friends to start with, and I think that's always kind of held us together in strong stead for the business relationship as well. And it could have been tricky.
Yes.
But we're just very honest with each other. So.
And I know it is difficult, and that's the thing. The flip side of that is if you go into business with a friend, there is the danger that you damage the friendship. But for you, it's actually been the glue that's held you together. What do you think have been the most challenging times for you?
Definitely the last 2 years. But if we look prior to that, it was the hard decisions that you have to make for growth. So you've banked some money, and there's opportunities ahead, and you need to invest that. And so it's around finding understanding together on where that's best placed.
And do you find because you're different people, you want to go in different ways sometimes, and then who wins, or how do you get a win-win situation?
So it's always been a win-win in the end. If there is an idea that we're not 100% aligned on, then we'll just talk it out. Sometimes we'll just bring the whole team in and say, where does this stand with you? Where do these ideas fit with the values we've got? We always just refer back to the plan and say, is this in the interest of the growth of the business as we set out? So it's very rare, to be honest.
Does it help having more people to come in and do that together?
Yeah, it's not always it's not. So we're responsible for starting the business, but there's a senior management team, so we make decisions together.
Yeah, brilliant.
That's really helpful.
Your products have always been, that organic, that green message. The packaging, everything has been so important that sustainability and the planet have been considered. Again, you were ahead of ahead of the curve on that, but that's still massively important to you.
Yes, you're right. It is. I think the idea when we first started the business, the idea was just to get things right. Those 32 jobs came with varying different bosses and attitudes towards business, and we just said, right, let's get this right from the start. And we've learned a lot along the way, but as long as everybody's been treated fairly along the way, the three words that we had, the kind of buzzwords around the website are people, plant, and planet. So if we can make sure everybody along the supply chain, from the picker and their families all the way through to our staff and their families and our customers, if everybody's looked after, then that's that sorted. We buy organic, so we've got the plant looked after, and then accreditations like Rainforest Alliance and Fair Trade look after the environment as well. Fair Trade's more people, but Rainforest Alliance looks after the environment as well. So
tell me about your sourcing then, and where you actually get the tea now.
So I think the last count was something like 42 countries that the ingredients come from. And we bring the ingredients to our factory in Belfast and blend them. It can take around 6 months to develop a tea from scratch. And once you're comfortable with what that tea tastes like, then you'll launch it to market. So we've got the majority of tea coming from 2 fair trade gardens, which are in Rwanda and Assam in North India.
Have you visited?
Yes. Yeah, I've not been to Rwanda yet. I'd really like to get there. Once the volume of tea gets to a certain stage, then we'll go and visit. Organisations like Fair Trade really do a good job to kind of connect you and make sure the standards are upheld. But we've been to Tanzania and Assam and Nepal, and some Darjeeling is absolutely stunning. Some amazing places. Really good perk to the job.
And when you go there and you meet the pickers and you hear about their families, do you actually have those conversations? Do you come back reassured that absolutely I can stand by everything that we write in our packaging?
Yes. And I don't think Fair Trade's perfect. I don't think any of these accreditations are perfect. And I think they'd be the first to admit that. But without it, there's so much unknown that can happen. So it's better to have the accreditation, and those first-hand. It's very transparent as a business. Tea has always been very transparent, so it's great to be reassured.
Talk to me a little bit about the climate and your climate action pledge, because obviously the places that you're growing your tea now, and I know that you have other plans and you are growing more locally, but we'll come to that in a second. But when you look at the countries that you source from, and you look at the challenges, and you look at the flooding, and you look at the drought, what's going to happen with where you source your tea from and in these countries, and what are you doing to try and help?
So I suppose as a business we have the responsibility to take action, and as individuals we do, of course, but as a business and a collective business we have a huge responsibility. And there are issues in the countries. There are droughts, and we see it firsthand. And sometimes we're out of tea for the very reason. We're part of the Responsible Business Network of Northern Ireland, and 50% of the team are involved in us joining this and signing up to the Climate Action Pledge. So that's, of course, to maintain a future for everybody and keep the temperature as it should be. Well, as a business, what we're signing up to do is to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of Suki Tea by 30% by 2030. So we're well on our way. We've been at this 2-3 years now. So we have a baseline, and there's still a lot of work to do in the wider picture. So we're looking at absolutely everything is being scrutinised, from the small incidentals like packaging within the business to the transportation of goods around as well. So we're looking, the whole business is kind of taken apart and analysed, and we'll make changes everywhere we can. So we're installing solar soon. That's it's more of a long-term investment, but with the prices of gas and the shocking prices of energy
this
at
is
the moment.
absolutely it, and the cost of doing business as well. You know, it really is. How do you feel about it all at the minute? How have you seen your energy bills, maybe not quite yet, rise, but I know businesses up until now haven't had any support.
I've seen some shocking examples, especially hospitality is really hit. Gas and electricity, and unfortunately we're seeing some fallout from that as well. So customers are just notifying us 1 or 2 a month that they have to close because they can't afford to run their business. And hopefully we see a brighter future for that. But and I know factories that are running night shifts just to cut costs on their energy bills.
But your business model, I suppose, depends on these independent coffee shops, these tea houses. That they need to be supported and helped, because otherwise your business will suffer.
Yeah, and if you think about a regular coffee shop, a lot of work's going into that coffee machine that's on all day long. You know, a lot of work's going into how to make that sustainable. So their energy costs are down, and there's some innovative machines that are coming out. So hopefully the wider network are looking at hospitality to help it.
And then obviously the customers, you know, even I've just noticed if you're going in and you had the sort of 1 coffee a day habit, there's been quite a hike in the price of that coffee, maybe from £2.50 to £3.50. And, you know, your tenner doesn't go very far anymore. Are people just going to say, do you know what, I just can't afford this luxury anymore?
I mean, I think there's going to be a bit of that, but I think it'll be the upgrade of the car and the fancy holidays that are cut. And those small, affordable luxuries are, you know, we weathered through 2008. And we're just starting the business, and our business absolutely boomed because people wanted a treat, a small, affordable treat. And I think we hope that's going to be the case. But it is difficult and it is tough. I recognise that completely.
But some solutions need to be found, and any help that can be got, maybe with a new Prime Minister, who knows. Anyway, I did mention also that you do grow tea locally.
Yes. Now, growing tea and producing tea are quite different.
Oh, right.
And
okay.
actually growing tea is quite a loose term for it. So we have a garden in Portaferry, and we have 320 plants, and they have survived 4 winters, which means that they're established. And we've just taken some pickings this year. We don't have enough in one pick to be able to produce tea, so we're freezing them, and then once we've got enough at the end of, in about October time, we'll consolidate it all and start producing some actual tea. Now, we have enough for about maybe 300 grams. So it's really...
How many cups of tea would that make?
So it would make a restaurant full of tea. A busy cafe.
And why Portaferry?
It has a microclimate, and our mates have a big back garden.
Okay.
So
that's very exciting. And obviously you started this 4 years ago. We've had all sorts of weather since then. And actually, even though it was raining today when we came in, it's been very dry.
It has. We did a study. This is really ironic to say this, but we don't get enough rain in Northern Ireland to grow tea.
There you
so
go.
There's 12 inches and we need 18. So we will have to irrigate the garden at some point. It's survived so far, and they're all right, but the future will say it needs irrigation, so we'll have to top it up slightly, just in those kind of hot bursts, the 2 weeks of summer that we get here.
So this is probably not what you foresaw whenever you grew tea in Portaferry. You thought, the natural irrigation will be there, it will be provided, but another sign that the climate is changing.
Yes, and as we see it with vineyards in England, they're moving north as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us more about what's next then for Suki Tea, Oscar.
So we're in an exciting time. There are difficulties generally. We've got cost of living, and we've got the energy hikes and everything. But specialty tea is on the up. And I think it's because people's knowledge is growing. There's a lot of choice in regular supermarkets at the moment as well. So the education in specialty coffee has led to specialty tea. And we see overall this kind of growth in demand for good proper tea. And it's not to have every day, it's maybe just to have that treat. So we've decided to invest in a new factory. Some of it's automated. We're over 3 factories at the moment, so to consolidate that into one makes a lot of sense. And we can make energy efficiencies and put the solar in and really go quite green with the new build. We'll continue to champion the education side as well. Yeah, it can be part of your education system.
So part of the curriculum.
Yeah, it's pointed. It can add to, like it's officially recognised, but I just don't know how to say that. I've not discussed this really so much.
Okay, so people could actually learn how to produce tea.
So they can learn how to produce tea, or we do courses for tea and hospitality, and then this is not just a professional side. People who are just enthusiasts can become a member of this organisation. And so there's some courses being launched, and there's a training facility being built in Lisbon.
That's exciting. I must sign up for that.
And then we continue to develop the blends as well.
So talk us through. You've so many different types of tea. Tell us about some of the flavours, and tell us about how much work goes into creating a flavour.
This is part of the job. I mean, I love the travel. I love the challenge of running a business, but this is probably the thing I love the most. Just being a real foodie is you can get really creative with it. And a lot of the teas that we produce might not hit trend. So if we create a Mediterranean range, maybe one day that's going to come around into fashion, and then those will be ready. We've done a lot of work with kind of mocktail type teas. The low to no movement's huge at the moment.
What's that?
Low to no, so no alcoholic and kind of low alcoholic or no alcoholic. And tea is it's a good alternative.
Okay.
It's a nice treat. So it's not just cafes that are taking this on. Sommeliers are looking at tea as well.
Fascinating.
So a base for kind of non-alcoholic cocktails, mocktail type teas. And on the flip side of that, also teas that are used in tipsy tea, so as the base for ingredients in actual cocktails.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say it takes around 6 months to develop a flavour. Really creative process, and it involves whoever's had the inspiration to start with, bringing an idea to the table, and then we have maybe 1,000 ingredients. We call it the tea lab, and we can bring those ingredients together very quickly, make something kind of liquid, and then pour the liquids together to go, right, okay, something like this, and then we'll develop that out and fine-tune it, and then we'll test it with our network. And if we were doing this solely as a role within the business, we could probably turn it around in 6 weeks. But we're always developing around 10 teas at any given time. So
are you?
Yeah, there's always something ahead that we kind of think maybe this will go, maybe this will. It was dessert teas for a while. It was kind of mocktail teas for a while, and Mediterranean. We tried Mediterranean. I'm really stuck on making a banoffee pie tea. That's not worked for me yet. That's about 5 years.
You're not giving up.
No, I'm not giving up. But we're continually being creative. There's a real kind of buzz when we taste new flavors.
And who does all the?
The whole team.
Okay.
Everybody, yeah. Everybody comes in. Everybody's invited anyway. We might not see everybody every time, but there would be. It's not just one person making a decision. No. Everybody has different tastes in the business as well.
It's totally subjective anyway,
isn't it? It is, absolutely.
Yes.
So,
but do you have sort of certain criteria that you all taste and say, does it have this, does it have that?
Okay. If we're tasting, we're not allowed to talk at the time. Okay. Because somebody going, oh, that's a bit chocolatey. Oh. Then all everybody can taste is chocolate at that point. So you have to kind of, there's a few rules about how to engage with tasting, but we all know that by now, and it's much fun.
It sounds fabulous. I'd love a job as a tea taster. That sounds good. What's your favourite flavour?
The tea that I go to more over any other tea is Belfast Brew. There's a bit of bias to that. It's the tea that we produce, but honestly, every time I have it, I'm just like, oh, that's a good cuppa. It's
really refreshing.
Yeah, it's clean and bright. It's robust as well. It's got all the characteristics that tea should have. But I love Belfast Brew. But sometimes it's mood, so I tend to have something a bit more citrusy, like Earl Grey, when I get home. That kind of cuts off my day to the evening. And then sometimes rooibos teas. I like rooibos teas at night. So it all depends on mood. But Belfast Brew is the go-to every day.
The one that makes you go,
yeah.
Listen, it has been a pleasure talking to you. I'm fascinated. Did you know actually my granny's cat is called Suki, and that was after Suki Tea, because we didn't know what to call him. And,
that's amazing.
So what about Suki? We were having a little cup of tea, so there you go. The purpose of this podcast is to inspire existing business owners and ambitious entrepreneurs to grow their businesses by offering insight into the success of businesses such as Suki Tea. So what advice, this question goes to everyone, would you give to people who may have a business idea but have no idea where to begin or are unsure as to whether the risk is worth taking, so they're just about to walk through Ormeau Park?
Okay. There's no bad ideas. I think it's just getting a sense check with either your local business network, asking for help, speak to people. I think there's something about people who've started a business already that, and they're walking down a path that has been trodden so many times. The fundamentals of business are the same. Everybody's idea is going to be very unique, but they're very willing to help out. So I would ask the local community, ask the network. Invest and I are very helpful. Belfast Entrepreneurs Network, I think it's called Ben, still exists. Those, I think it does. I've not been for a while, but there's a lot of organisations and a lot of assistance out there. I think the one scary thing is that people think they're going this alone, and they're really not. There's a lot of willingness to support and help and see things succeed.
And that requires trust on your part, to trust these people that they want to help you,
yes.
And it's not in it for them.
Yes, exactly. So I wouldn't be scared to open up and just have that honest chat. You can keep your business idea kind of locked down if you're worried about that, but just the process of starting, and you'll find that people are extremely willing to help.
Well, that's lovely. So do ask for help and listen and take that help. Oscar, thank you so much for joining me today. Another fantastic episode of the Public Eye podcast, and there'll be more to come. This podcast was recorded in Granite Podcast Studio. Interested in starting up your own podcast but don't know how? Granite Podcast Studio can help. Record your podcast in our state-of-the-art studio, which is based in the heart of Newry City. Our studio has cutting-edge and user-friendly technology and can seat up to 4 people. We also provide an editing service for our team, using your guidance and editing notes to provide you with a flawless finished product, leaving your listeners wanting more. For more information on how you can get started, visit www.granitepodcaststudio.com.